Okay, this is Star Trek CCG Thursday Night Deck Building Episode 5. I'm trying to see if I can rebuild a deck that I've used in the past about 5 or 6 years ago, maybe later than that. It did quite well occasionally, was much more disappointing in other occasions, but the core is pretty much still the same and it still works quite well. So I looked at the old deck lists, and amazingly the core still works as it is. It's mostly the personal selection that I've reworked and some of the missions. So let's have a look at the missions. If you see these on table, let's find hidden base, resist occupying forces. So we've got Badlands, we've got Cardassia region so far. We've got another Badlands mission. Let's put that one here. We've got Cardassia. Battle of Cardassia. And the Cresari Rendezvous. Alright. Let's assume the opponent seeded an Alpha Quadrant mission in there. Or maybe they didn't. Maybe they're close together. Where do you put the dead end? Where do you put your good combos? Right, so this mission selection is supposed to be the core of a treaty deck that I used to run a while ago, and it starts off quite straightforward with a Eudor and the Q's tent for the basic infrastructure, and then we're going to seed a couple of things, and we'll start off with the new Dominion command. Plays on Cardassia Prime, and if you haven't seeded any Gamma Quadrant missions, looks like we haven't seeded any of those, you may download the central command there. So let's do that. Let's download the central command. And what else does it say? Your compatible water founders and TOTS that are native to Alpha Quadrant may use central command as if Cardassian Gulls, so that means they can report for free, because Cardassian Gulls can report for free there. Once per game in place of card draw, you may download one Universal Dominion ship native to the Alpha Quadrant here. That's a new card that was played quite a bit in recent tournaments, and I think it was also one of the cards used in the deck that won the online regional, if I got that correct. So that's one that I've included here. We also have some other Cardassian stuff, assigned support personnel, which works, of course, together with, where is it? Dominion war efforts for the once per turn download of a support personnel. We've also got new arrivals for a free draw and a free card play of a universal personnel. There's call for reinforcements for a once per game download of a universal ship, and also a once per game repair function if we have a matching facility in play. We also have the hidden agenda, the Defend Homeworld. As usual, when we don't run Q's 10 Civil War, I mostly tend to see the Defend Homeworld for the download, because that's usually a crucial one in almost any deck. Then we also have the Klaestron Outpost that can seed at any of our missions, because we've got Cardassian icons on these three, and we can also seed it in Federation mode on this one or on that one. In this case, we're sticking close to the HQ here, so we'll seed it in Cardassian mode there. And since we've seeded the Klaestron Outpost, we can also use the Klaestron Treaty, the Federation Cardassian one. Usually plays on table, but if we seeded this specific outpost, we can also seed it instead of just playing it. Right, we'll have Study Divergent History on the HQ for extra card draws. And of course we need mirror personnel for that. So we have Assign Mission Specialists. And since our FADs and Cardis are compatible, we can download Benjamin Maxwell and Anson Davis there. So for an Alpha and a Mirror Quadrant to start. And I'm also seeding Reunite Legends on this outpost. Now that's a card that I've used in last week's Kazon deck, and if you watched that episode, I said last week that this might no longer work, that you seed Reunite Legends and then download a ship that you then report undocked because it's not compatible, because last week we wanted to get a Federation ship to a Kazon outpost, just float in space around the outpost, and they've since clarified this in the September rules update that you can no longer do that, which doesn't surprise me because frankly the tendency was that the game goes in the direction that you use specific cards of a specific faction, and mixing in other ideas apparently is not something that the people in charge would like to see. So it wouldn't surprise me at all if they actually put a hard limit on that card that says, hey, you can only use it on a matching outpost, and no longer use it with no longer use even the Federation ship download on a non-aligned outpost in the Delta Quadrant. That would be one of the ways to fix the Kazon deck. Just add an extra Necrid supply depot, then you could still use it according to the rules at the moment. But I think it would be just easier to cut 4 of the seed cards, the Ancestral Vision, the Micro Wormhole, the Quark's Rods, the Reunite Legends, and instead add Habit of Disappearing and multiple copies of the important cards to the deck. So you still end up with the 4 draws, but you get a couple more seed slots for dilemmas. Anyway, we use Reunite Legends here, and as you can see, that's 13 seed cards, and that gives us a lot of flexibility with dilemmas. We've got 5 missions that we can cover with 3, and then we have a 2-card combo, but there are some decent ones with 2 cards. Now, what do we do here? So we have 4 missions in the Cardassia region, 25.1, 35, and 2 30s. This one here, Battle of Cardassia, is stealable, but if you look carefully, it's only stealable for Cardassians and Dominion players. So we are relatively safe there, and even then they need weapons greater than 36 to attempt. So they are not going to rush in on the first 2 or 3 turns and just steal it. So you have some way to actually try and do that mission yourself. Or maybe it's all a ploy to lure them to Cardassia because we want to attack them. This one here is also a relatively new mission, 30 points, but it can get the +10 if Cardassian Liberation Front is in play. So the opponent is looking at this mission that can potentially add 20 points for 50. This one can add 10, would bring us to 90. So they could be targets here for good dilemmas. But what we are really going for here is either Cardassia and Krasari, or the 2 missions in the Badlands region, because with any combination of a planet and a space from these 4, we can get to 100 points. So, how do we do that? Let's just shuffle the deck and see what we draw. So, as you can see, it's a lot of Federation stuff here. And we've drawn the Starship Constitution. That's actually the ship that I would download anyway on the first turn with call for reinforcements. So in this case, it was more or less a wasted seed slot, because that's usually the card play on the first turn. There is no other universal ship that you could download with call for reinforcements, so this is really just a wasted seed slot in this specific draw. And then we get a free play. We have 2 free play options. Either we play a Gull or Legate to the central command, or we play a universal personal with new arrivals. So let's have a look at our hand. We don't have a Gull, but we have Odo, this new version of Odo, and we can actually play him thanks to the Dominion command text, because it says your compatible founders that are native to the Alpha Quadrant. Odo is actually a founder. It says so in the last line of his lore. So he may report like a Cardassian Gull, means he may report for free. So that's our free play. And then that's it as far as card plays are concerned. With the OS Mission Specialist, we can staff the Starship Constitution. We also have a second personal there in case anybody pulls out Obelisk of Masaka, which I think has a function that forces you to have two personal. Then we fly over to Cardassia. If you look at the regions here, the region missions, apart from Cardassia, the other three have a span of 2. So we could also put in an extra mission between the mission where we have the outpost, and we would still get to Cardassia with the range of 6 on that ship. All right. Now the idea of this deck is to card play one personal, free play one personal. We cannot play a second personal for free because then new arrivals would go away. We would download one personal. We have different cards and ship downloads that let us get somebody in play, and we also have the assigned support personal Dominion War Efforts engine that we can use all the time. So play 2 guys, download 1, and then as you can see here, we also have the Nanoprobe Resuscitation that should give us a 4th personal that we can put into play every turn. So let's try and set this up. First of all, we need card draws. For that, we now need a second mirror quadrant personal. So we are going to use our assigned support personal download and grab a mirror quadrant support personal here, Aramax, and he can report to the matching facility. And with that, we have 2 mirror guys and an alpha quadrant guy, and usually we have another alpha quadrant guy that we can play the first turn in our starting hand, as happened this time as well. So we already have the 4 guys we need to fuel the double draws from Study Divergent History. So we can immediately do that. So stop one couple, stop another couple here for 2 draws. We still have our download from that ship available that we could use on a future turn. But for the moment, we'll just do the Reunite Legends download here. Download the USS Enterprise A. Now for that, we'll turn the Klaestron Outpost into a Federation outpost, so that ship is actually matching and not only compatible, but because of the treaty, it could report anyway. Right, not much else we can do on our first turn. Defend Homeworld we can't use because we've already downloaded somebody. So we would draw 1 and draw another one with the new arrivals as our second turn card draw. It's our opponent's turn now. During our opponent's turn, we would download somebody with the Enterprise A. It says download any Federation original movies personal or James T. Kirk. Now, weirdly enough, we have both these guys in our starting hand. Admiral Kirk is the one we really want here. If we already have him in play, then James T. Kirk would also be a good addition. Why do we need this specific version of Admiral Kirk? Leadership ×3 seems a bit overkill. Diplomacy is something that we can find on other personnel as well. But why we really want him is his unique ability of once each turn, discard 1 card to draw 1 card. And if you've paid attention to what we have in our hand, that shows us how we can actually manage to get so many personnel into play. All right, our opponent passes the turn back to us, so our guys are unstopped. And we now look at a hand consisting of 8 cards. And this is what a typical turn in this deck would then look like. We report a universal personal for free. We card play a personal. In this case, let's go for Niels Barris because he's really good for doing space missions, thanks to his Cheat Out of Dilemmas special download. Then we get to download somebody. We could download another support personnel, but right now we want to use our Defend Homeworld download. Let's pitch this and let's go into the deck. And the security personnel we want to download is a specific version of Jean-Luc Picard. This one here, simply titled Jean-Luc. He has security. We report him to the HQ as well. And why do we need this guy? Because he has all the Borg subcommand icons. And we need these for Nanoprobe Resuscitation. So this turn, our card plays were the universal personnel, Sparrows with the regular card play. We downloaded him, and now we are going to use Admiral Kirk. In the order phase, once each turn, may discard one card to draw one card. So we discard First Officer Spock. He's a mirror quadrant guy. We don't have a crossover in play. We cannot report him from hand anyway. So he is discarded, and we draw one card for that. And then we can play once every turn, so it would also work on opponent's turn. We play the Nanoprobe Resuscitation to return the top card of a discard pile to hand. Hey, Spock comes back to hand. If it is a personal card, it is, and you have any blue Borg in play, we have a blue Borg in play, then we may report that personal to that blue Borg. Picard is not really a Borg, but he's a former Borg, and in the game that qualifies as a Borg. So that's our fourth personal report here. We can use this Nanoprobe Resuscitation trick here to get around quadrant reporting restrictions, and that's why you find a lot of very good personnel with useful abilities from different quadrants in the deck. There are not too many because you don't want to have them clogging your hand and being unable to play anything, but there are a couple cards in there that you can only report via this Nanoprobe Resuscitation trick here. Okay, so we already have 4 good personnel here, and we've got 4 guys here and 1 guy there. With 9 personnel in play on the second turn, we should be able to attempt the mission. However, in this deck, I usually wait a little bit longer. I only attempt if I have Niels Barris out, because thanks to his incoming message Federation download, if you're not familiar with it, let's just take it out. It says, place on Federation ship until outpost reached, then discard. And you can actually do this to cheat out of a dilemma. If you run into something that destroys your ship or that kills too many of your valuable personnel, then you can just interrupt or special download this interrupt, and then you fly back to your outpost, and then you are immune to the dilemma's effects. That doesn't mean the dilemma goes away, but you can then fly in with a new crew once you have prepared for that dilemma, either assemble a crew that can take the casualties that's expendable, or send in a crew that can actually beat that dilemma. So he's a really good guy to have him play early on. Okay, usually I don't attempt on the second turn simply because a lot of these guys are necessary to just fuel the draw engines. That's one of the disadvantages here to all those seeded card draws, that they take up some of the resources of the personnel you have in play. But we can also use this to our advantage, because usually the guys I have fueling this here are Jean-Luc for his reporting ability. Sometimes Captain Kirk, he usually stays on that ship so he can fly around a little bit, and the 2 mission specialists. The idea is they sit here and generate card draws until we need them to score the bonus points, then we bring them in. Okay, so we can again stop Mirror Mirror and Alpha Alpha for 2 draws, and then at the end of the turn we would draw another 2. We could now, for example, use the special download on the Starship Constitution to get somebody in play. In this case, I think, again, we had bad luck because the only guy left to download here would be Vandenberg, so we might as well do that on our opponent's turn. And then on our turn, we can report a Legate for free with the HQ text. We can card play somebody, in this case, James T. Kirk. We can download somebody. I think we'll go for another support personnel here. Usually you want to wait with the download until after you've attempted the mission, because as long as you have a ship out that can download somebody, especially the Starship Enterprise with its very versatile download of any original series personnel of Federation affiliation, you usually want to have that one available for when you attempt mission, but after a mission attempt, it doesn't really matter. But just to show you what we could do, so grab another support personnel from the queue's tent, and from now on it's really just a question of which skills have we already got in play. In this case, there's engineer, there's science, there's medical, another science, another engineer. But among the guys that we will send on a mission attempt, we, for example, haven't seen a security, so that will make sense to now download the security support personnel. And then, of course, we still have the cycling engine. With Admiral Kirk, we're going to discard a card. We have, for example, Rainer Kepak, who has lots of useful skills. We have Christopher Pike, who gives all our guys a bonus. And I found this one to be very handy against some of the dilemmas that are played in the current meta. So let's discard him with the Admiral, draw one, and then play a Nanoprobe Resuscitation to report him to Picard. And now we have a crew of 7 guys, actually 8, 9, because we also have Damar and Kirk who enter play this game. And as you can see, there are a lot of guys that simply have very useful abilities. James T. Kirk can download a Captain's Order card. In this case, that will be Lower Decks, that then boosts all the Universal personnel we've got in play. Legate Damar can download for Cardassia. It actually plays on him. So our Cardassians are Integrity and Strength +2, so lots of attribute bonuses that we can put in play. What we haven't seen so far is another ship or a way to download one, but they will come up. So turn 3, we have a super crew that we want to send in. We even have Niels Barris to cheat out of a space mission if we want. The problem here is that we simply haven't seen the cards that that bring us over to the Badlands, because for that we need the other ships. We can fly to find hidden base, which requires 2 hand weapons that we haven't seen so far. So at the moment, I would probably go for attempting Krasari and see how far we can go. And just see if we can clear out a dilemma or 2. Then we would draw 2 with Study Divergent, draw another 2 to end the turn, and we still haven't seen anything that gets us another ship. And that's rather strange, because we are already halfway through the deck, or almost. There are 50 cards in the deck. And by now we should have seen one of the other cards that get us a ship. Let's just have a look. There's the Future Enterprise. Oh my god, this doesn't look good at all. There's the USS Pasteur. So these are ships that, despite the heavy staffing, are really easy to staff with the guys. We have a lot of alternate universe guys. We have enough command stars. So these 2 are ships that we can use to just zoom up and down the space line. There's also going to the top, which is easily set up. We start with a command star. We download a second one on our opponent's first turn. So these can immediately get you something. For example, Admiral Riker, who can then download any Enterprise. Usually the first enterprise would be this one, and then you could use that download to download Wall of Ships, and then download another enterprise. That would be the Starship Enterprise. That's the one with the super good download of any Federation OS personnel. And there's also another going to the top in there. So as you can see, among those 28 cards left in the deck, there were 7 that were a ship or gave us access to a ship. So that was really strange that we hadn't actually drawn into one. So you see, it really makes sense to waste that extra seed slot for the Call of Reinforcements, because every now and then you just get a bad shuffle, and if you can't really move, then chances are the game is not going well for you. The only guaranteed ship we have is the USS Enterprise A, but to staff it, we must have the Admiral or the James T. Kirk version aboard, so it's very easily destaffed. There aren't many OS guys in the deck, original movies guys. One of them is Captain Spock. He's mostly in the deck because you can easily discard him, and you can once per game take him back. So even if he dies, you just take him back to hand. He also has a very good skill set, so he's an easy addition here. Let's have a look at the guys that we cannot actually play when they end up in our hand. We've already seen First Officer Spock. Among the other guys that we can't play from hand is Security Chief Sulu. There's also Captain Dex, and there's 7 of 9. So 1 Delta Quadrant and 3 Mirror Quadrant personnel. They are mostly in here because they have very good skills and attributes. Especially Captain Dex here with Geology, Navigation, Archaeology is something that is very useful if you run into misinterpreted history and rules of obedience all the time. And Sulu is here because he can download a phaser. And as you've seen, there are 2 missions that require hand weapons, or that give us bonuses for hand weapons. So let's have a look. There's Sulu, who can download a hand weapon, classic Type 2 phaser. There is also Mr. Scott, who can download another phaser from the Q's tent. There is a Universal Cardassian that we can play for free, who can download a disruptor. And there is also the Starfleet Type 2 phaser that simply plays for free. And of course they have the double function. If you attempt a planet, chances are you run into Denevan neuroparasites at one point, and every phaser you have lets you save one of the guys that are chosen to be killed. So if you have a few of them out early, that definitely helps you. You need 2 hand weapons to complete Find Hidden Base with the bonus points. So that mission gives you 30 plus 10 if there are no Marquee personnel in the Badlands. We don't have any Marquee personnel in the deck, so unless the opponent somehow manages to bring personnel here, if they want to do that with Span 5 and Span 4 respectively, they can of course try that. But usually we look at that mission as a 40-point mission. And then of course we have our Leadership Mission Specialist for 45. And we also have James T. Kirk, who we can download either with that ship download if we have drawn Admiral Kirk, or he's also one of the targets of going to the top with the double leadership. And he can solve that mission, or he can help solving with his leadership. You only have to use one of his double leadership and then provide the other leadership with Maxwell. So you can have 50 points here. For that mission, it works just as well. You have Leadership Mission Specialist, you have a Treachery Mission Specialist, and then James T. Kirk can provide his Cunning. So again, this mission will be worth 50 points. So you can get to 100 by doing these 2 missions. The idea is that now that there are a couple of dilemmas that punish you for running several missions in the same region, or that have ridiculously high attribute requirements. I think one of them is called Plasma Currents, I think. Yeah, that's an example. To get past requires strength greater than 50 plus 10x, where x is the number of other missions in this region, if in a region. So if they put that one at Cresari Rendezvous, then we have 3 other Cardassian region missions, so plus 10 times 3. So that will be strength greater than 80 to get past. So that's an annoying dilemma. So the idea would be that they seed these dilemmas in the Cardassian region, and then we just fly over and get our 100 points from the Badlands. But we can also get 100 points in the Cardassian region. Cresari Rendezvous is only 25 points here, but Kirk can provide his officer for another 5 points. Ensign Davis can provide his treachery. It already brings us up to 35. And you can discard up to 4 hand weapons. Conveniently, we have 4 in the deck for potential plus 5. So we can get this mission up to 55 points actually. And likewise, we can also attempt Cardassia itself with the HQ Secure Homeworld. We have to draw into that. We could also download it with the Defend Homeworld, but we usually want that for our personnel. And then once we have that on the mission, again, we have a Leadership Mission Specialist, we have a Treachery Mission Specialist, we can provide the other leadership with James T. Kirk. So from that alone, we can bring the Homeworld up to 50 points. And we can even, for Cardassia, bring it up to 65 points if we have Damar out and 2 other Cardassians with honor. We could then remove them from play. So that's usually something that you do if you solve this mission last, because you would lose 3 personnel for that. But 55 and 65 points from these 2 missions is definitely something that you can do, and I've done this in the past. It's not too hard to pull off. So any combination of planet and space from these 4 can get you to 100. Sometimes you need the extra points and just fly over. These missions, Officer times 3 and Honor times 3, it's actually not that hard. You even have the alternative requirements of Kira and Legate Damar. They are both in the deck as well. And likewise, that mission, Leadership times 2, Security times 2, Honor times 2, is not really difficult. And you can attempt all these missions if you need the points. Okay, let's have a look at some of the other personnel that are here. There are a couple of Gulls that can play for free. Ducat, of course, useful for the double navigation that you need for that mission. If your mission specialists, they only provide the leadership and treachery, but navigation is not that common in the deck. Ducat has a double helping. He's also a card that you can download with the going to the top if you have a spare one. And also his treachery. Treachery is actually not too plentiful in this deck, so you might actually want to double check whether you have it. Other Gulls that can report for free: Dark Hall, Security, Navigation, Treachery, speaks for itself. Disick plays for free because it's universal. Honor, Medical, Anthropology, and attributes that can be boosted by lower decks. There is a support personnel, mostly in there because of the archaeology and geology for rules of obedience and misinterpreted history. Nader is another Gull that can play for free. He also has a nice skill set. He has the rare law, also treachery and anthropology. Osset is another Gull that plays for free. Again, she's got archaeology, exobiology, navigation, treachery, science. Deek is a useful card that you can special download with her that lets you recycle a card from your discard pile. You could put it in the queue's tent. It's not in this version because with all the nanoprobes, I think there are 8 copies of the nanoprobes in this deck in 50 cards, you usually have enough ways to get a critical personnel that has died back into hand. And the final Gull that you haven't seen yet is Oren. This is a guy that I usually play after I've seen dilemmas. He has useful printed skills, Officer Medical Science Physics, but when reported gains any skill until end of the turn. So it's a once per game, dial any skill you need. If you run into a wall that you cannot pass and your opponent has managed to kill all the other guys with that skill, you can report him and use him to have that skill for that turn, and then that effect is gone. So usually a card you want to keep until you need it. Among the universal guys we can report for free are the Alice series, the Android, great skills, medical transporter skill, bio diplo, and also super good attributes. There's Chaban, relatively new one. Again, Exo and Archaeology is so great to have against misinterpreted history, a dilemma that I've seen so many times in the last couple of months. And I've also put in an oldie but goldie here, Suna. Medical security treachery are always useful here. And you can also download the reflection therapy. You could, instead of the Suna, also run Vina, who can gain any skill you want. The problem with Vina is you have to call this at the beginning of the turn, whereas Suna is a bit more flexible. You have him in play and then you can use the reflection therapy. So that's a more aggressive version. You can put him into play and then use him on the same turn, whereas for Vina you report him, then you'd have to wait a little bit. And of course, other guys are simply powerhouses. Dr. McCoy to nullify medical dilemmas, Data and Geordie for the triple engineer that you might need, Worf and Jetsia, simply because they bring officer, science, security, double honor, which is great against Ankari spirits and the like, astrophysics, physics, anthropology. The special download is not in the deck here. Raina Kapak we've already seen, and there's also Kira with great skills. Sorry, here she is with great skills, and she can also be used for the alternate requirements should you have to attempt resist occupying forces. So again, a kind of superstar deck where you just try to get the most out of the person you want. Of course, you can change the skill or the personal selection any way you want. It really depends on the dilemmas you've seen in your meta, whether you think somebody is running a particular wall, but you have most of the bases covered. You can get a few personnel back from the dead with the nanoprobes. You can dial a couple of skills over the course of the game with Oren and the reflection therapy, and you can also copy one with the classic communicator. You can have a look at those cards. The classic communicator, of course, can copy a skill. The classic tricorder can give the OS personal a skill. With Dr. Not a Bricklayer, we can download a geology personal. Oftentimes it is Captain Dex. There aren't too many geology personnel, but again, this gets around her quadrant restriction, so she's a natural target for the Bricklayer download here. The one thing I'm struggling a little bit here is whether to actually include that many personnel in the deck, because even though you're going to have a couple of casualties, you usually can report enough personnel just with the nanoprobes and the downloads every turn that you effectively don't run out of particular skills too early. So I think this deck could actually be trimmed a bit, make it tighter. Instead of 50 cards, maybe go for 46 or something like that, and still have a decent skill matrix. Maybe also get rid of one of the ships. But as long as we don't have a guaranteed download of a ship with high range, I think I'd leave them in and just try our luck with this selection. It has to be said that there is a counter to this deck, not a hard counter, but something that can make your life quite annoying, and that's a particular personal. I'm not sure I find it. Oh yeah, there she is. Narana, Officer Astro Stellar, that's not that interesting, but what's interesting is for rest of game, all Nanoprobe Resuscitation cards gain a point box, and if you can't read it, that says -5 here. Nanoprobe decks were played quite a bit a couple of years ago, and this card more or less took the fun out of that, because you could just keep her in hand, wait until your opponent has shown their strategy, and then you drop Nirvana, and then all the Nanoprobe Resuscitations are hit with the -5 points here. If somebody plays that card well, more power to them. But I haven't seen too many Nanoprobe decks recently, so why not give this deck a spin? There is also a 6-planet version of this deck that I've played occasionally with less Cardassian, less of a Cardassian component and different mission specialists. That was a mission set that I've seen Jason Drake play, that required biology and exobiology on the mission specialists, and that's also a really tight skill selection that you find on a couple of Federation planets. It's also something that works quite well, but of course you have to find a way to deal with the 140 points or include Genesis in that. All right, I haven't bothered to put in dilemmas. As I said, the deck has enough space for 17 dilemmas. 18 if you get rid of the call for reinforcements, but I'd leave it in for the moment. And this deck doesn't require any specific strategy. There is no battle bridge door or anything like that. You have the AU door for AU dilemmas. So take 17 dilemmas that you think work well in your meta, but there is nothing that has any particular synergy with the draw deck here. If you have a good idea, I'm always happy to listen to any suggestions here. Okay, that's more or less it for today. This might be the last episode for a while, because summer break is over now and I still don't know my schedule for the coming year. So depending on how my days and weeks are distributed, Thursday nights might or might not work. So this show might go on a break for a couple of weeks, but beginning of November at the latest we should be back, and maybe it works out next week anyway. If you have any suggestions for decks that you'd like to see highlighted, personally I wanted to do a Mirror Quadrant deck, Mirror Starfleet next, but if you have any suggestions, please let me know in the comments, and if you enjoy this at all, please like or subscribe when you see it on YouTube. And that's it. Until next time, bye bye.